Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of our podcast, Untitled ZX, also known as Movie Talk with Nick and Uncle Frank. I'm Uncle
I
Frank.
wonder how long we'll be able to keep count of the episodes before we lose count in the intro.
You can just keep counting,
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We're not far enough along to lose count yet, but
No. We first want to thank everyone. We released episode 1 and episode 2, so this is the first time we're recording when people have actually seen our initial episodes. So thank you, everyone, for
both YouTube
listening to
and
those.
Spotify so far. I intend to get them on more platforms in the near future.
Yeah. And so far, I've heard from a couple of people. I was driving past my cousin's house and stopped to say hi. And he's like, "Oh, I saw you're doing a podcast." And then I was in ShopRite and I heard from a friend of a friend. He's like, "Oh, I heard you guys are doing a podcast." I started listening to it. How about you, Nick? Anybody say anything to you?
No, most of the stuff I'm hearing is through third parties, mostly from Mom shared a lot of my stuff because Mom has more people following her than I do. So, hey, our
Yeah.
first episode has, I believe, 113 views on YouTube. So,
Yeah. Well, hopefully people are appreciating your perspectives on movies. So, all right, but before we get into this week's episode, Nick, you'll notice, is in a new location.
I
He has
am
gone back to Kutztown. How's it going your first week back, Nick?
I hate being here and want to go home.
That quick, huh?
Yeah, I
Any
really
good classes?
there's one of them that's mildly interesting. The rest of them are all just aggressively stressful, but with no real interesting things. I mean, the one of them sounded interesting on paper. I have writing for narrative television sounds great and really interesting and right up my alley on paper. But in execution, the one teacher that does that course, the professor, nice guy, but he cannot teach to save his life.
Oh boy.
And
Okay,
it's
well,
I have no idea what I'm doing in that class.
I hope it settles in a little bit and you enjoy some of the classes. Yeah, we'll see how that goes, I suppose. My week's been I spent all week trying to get Harry Style tickets, which were impossible,
Oh
which
my.
meant that I was sitting in queues on Ticketmaster for your sister and my daughter trying to get
Yeah,
them Harry Style tickets in New York City. Rough
of
one.
course. That sounds about right. This is just
Yeah,
like the Taylor Swift debacle all over again.
yeah. And why don't we take a minute because today, you know what today is, right, Nick?
February 2nd.
Which is
Oh, Groundhog Day, right. That's a thing.
Groundhog Day,
I consistently
famous
forget that that's a thing.
1993 movie. I'm assuming you've seen the Bill Murray Groundhog Day movie.
I have seen it. They actually, there's a local theater in Kutztown called The Strand. They were actually screening it this weekend. They screened it yesterday and Saturday.
It's one of the most perfect movies.
Yeah, I don't remember really. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I don't remember like loving it.
I
I
think you
can
need to go back and watch it. Yeah, I mean, story is amazing. It's about repeating history, how every day feels the same until you change yourself. That's the story.
Yeah, I vividly remember my biggest takeaway is like they never explained what exactly happened to him, but
Well,
that drove
yeah,
me nuts when I was like 14, but
yeah. All right, go back and watch it. A great movie.
I'll get to it at some point. I have a lot of things to watch. Been watching the James Bond recent ones recently, all of Daniel Craig's. I'm almost
Yeah.
with them because they put them on Netflix a couple weeks ago, and I had already seen his third one for a class, so I was like, you know what, why not? We'll catch up on these, and then we'll go back and watch the old ones later.
All right, so for today's agenda, we're going to talk about the top 5 most anticipated movies for 2026, according to Nick.
There's going to be
We're,
some controversial takes on here, but that's okay.
we're going to do a little bit of movie review. I know we said we're a different movie. We're going to be back and talk about Sinners again, and that's because I saw Sinners in the last week, so I can talk about it myself.
So
And
absolutely,
Nick is nice enough to wear a Sinners shirt today.
I came prepared.
Yes. And we'll do during our Star Wars time, we'll talk about our top 5 heroes. Last time we talked about top 5 villains. Today we're going to talk about top 5 heroes.
They threw this
But
part together on a whim. Only like two of these characters on that list are ones I actually think are like set in stone for me.
let's start with the top 5 anticipated movies. So I have your list here, Nick. I don't know if
What
there's an order here, but the
is
number one.
it? We're not starting with one number one. We're going to start with the honorable mentions.
Okay, honorable mentions before we get into the top five. You have two of them: Project Hail Mary and Digger. What's
All right, just
special about these?
just for future mention, when I have two honorable mentions, will you start with one at a time? Don't
Okay,
don't mention them both. It's called building dramatic tension. You've got to make
let's
people wait.
let's build a dramatic tension then, Nick. What about Project Hail Mary?
So that comes out next month. It's a sci-fi film based on a novel written by Andy Weir, or I think that's how you pronounce his name. He wrote The Martian, which Ridley Scott did a film of 11 years ago. But this film, it stars Ryan Gosling. It's directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who previously directed the 21 Jump Street film remake and the Lego movie. But the thing that's got me most excited for this one, and the thing when they first announced this movie, the one thing that caught my eye was the cinematographer. The man shooting the film is a man named Greg Fraser, who is an Academy Award winner, and for good reason. I think he is one of the greatest, most ambitious cinematographers currently working. He's done cinematography for Rogue One, Zero Dark 30, Dune, Dune 2, The Batman. The first Dune he won an Oscar for in 2022. Absolutely brilliant filmmaker. He's unfortunately not returning for Dune 3 or The Batman 2 because he's signed a deal with Sam Mendes to shoot four different Beatles or biopics about each individual member of the Beatles. That's a whole thing that I think we could probably make a whole episode about, but so I'm not going to get into that here.
So
But that
that so cinematography should be great here. Do we know what it's about? This story?
it's a story about this like science teacher who gets roped into a government plan to save the world because the sun is dying and he gets sent into space for years. I don't know a crazy amount about the premise, bar what I've seen in the trailers, but
Hmm.
it comes out soon. It comes out next month, and
Okay.
it's shot for IMAX, which is absolutely how I'm going to be seeing it. That needs to be seen in the IMAX format.
All right, that sounds like a good one. Tell me about the next one here, Digger.
So Digger is one that kind of caught my eye recently. It's directed by a man named Alejandro Inarritu. I can't actually say his name, but he previously directed films like Birdman, which many people thought was Michael Keaton's big comeback in 2014, and later he did The Revenant, which was the film that won Leonardo DiCaprio his first Oscar. Deservedly so. His performance in that film was great. But this film is like a dark comedy starring Tom Cruise.
Wow, that's a different thing for him.
Yeah, this is a very different thing. And from what I've read, we don't know too much about the premise, but it sounds like it's about some like influential rich guy who has to save the world from a disaster he caused.
When does that come out?
October 6th, I believe. I
Okay,
don't,
so
so
maybe
that's
we'll be talking about Tom Cruise for Oscar next year.
maybe
Hmm.
this could be a big one for him.
All right, let's get into the main list here.
We're going to
You,
start.
you want to start with number five?
Yeah, we're going from the bottom up. And for a lot of people, this would be a lot of people's number ones. This is widely considered one of the most anticipated of the year.
This
But
is the Odyssey. Who's the director here?
Christopher Nolan, the one
Yeah.
the one filmmaker that most like quote unquote normies are actually familiar with. He's like the modern Spielberg, the one of the few like filmmakers whose name is like a household name.
Yeah, and it's got Matt Damon in it.
Matt Damon is the lead, but the cast is insanely stacked. You've also got Anne Hathaway, Zendaya, Tom Holland, John Bernthal, Robert Pattinson's in there, Lupita Nyong'o's in there. And I'm barely scratching the surface of the cast. Benny Safdie, it's
Why
ridiculous.
why is it anticipated? Just because of the director?
Nolan alone is already a selling point. I don't know a crazy amount about the Odyssey as a story because this is obviously based on Homer's Odyssey, which
Right.
is obviously a very iconic ancient story. But this is also like, I mean, yes, it's Nolan. It's shot entirely with IMAX cameras, as he so frequently does. So it's going to like triple down on the spectacle, not unlike something like. I mean, Oppenheimer was more of a drama, but that still had the same amount of spectacle you'd expect from a Nolan film. This is
I
sort
will
of,
say that I'm going to be curious about how they do. I saw part of the trailer about a wooden horse and how they sneak in using a wooden horse, and I just feel like in today's age, I don't know, how do these guys fall for somebody sneaking in a wooden horse? So I'll be curious how that's portrayed in the
yeah,
movie.
that's something I feel like they just have to do anyway, because like the Trojan horse is such an iconically, like
They
it's,
have to do it, but the fact that somebody fell for it is still odd to me. We'll see.
hey, it's going to be fun to make fun of it, but since
Yeah.
it's just how that goes. Yeah,
All right,
but
next one you have is called Disclosure Day.
Disclosure Day. For the longest time, we knew literally nothing about this movie other than that it was a UFO movie, but the director was all I needed to hear. I'm not going to swear, freaking Spielberg, the greatest to ever live. That is
Yeah,
all I need to know.
right.
Like you could like tell me that this movie exists and just not market it at all. I mean, they did release a trailer about a month ago, and another trailer is set to debut this weekend. But if you like didn't market this movie at all and just told me Steven Spielberg sci-fi movie, I would be like, that's literally all I need to hear. I'm there.
When's this come out?
June 20th, I believe.
And do we know what it's about?
It's a UFO like sci-fi movie.
Got it.
I
Okay.
don't know a crazy amount about the premise, but it's about like a government conspiracy to keep like the existence of these aliens hidden, and a team of journalists trying to expose the truth to the world. Hence the
It-
title Disclosure Day.
His Spielberg, he hasn't directed anything in a while, right? Or
This will be his first film in 4 years, 3.5 years.
okay.
He's been doing smaller, more personal, like passion projects as of late, as opposed to big studio pictures. He
Yeah.
did called The Fablemans in late 2022. That was a big award hitter. I've not seen that one yet, but that
Mm.
one's sort of like a Fox biographical film, which is
Hmm.
sort of like it's inspired by his own childhood, albeit not like a full-blown biopic. And
Okay.
that one will.
This next one here, you're certainly going to need some explanation. Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, The Sorcery of Nymph Cirque. What the heck is that about?
Yeah, so that's a mouthful of a title. That's an anime film,
Okay.
part of the Gundam franchise, which is one of the longest running Japanese like sci-fi franchises. With the original series debut in 1979, and there have been films, there have been TV shows. There's a whole like fandom based entirely on like the model kits they do of the franchise as a whole is built around like giant robots fighting, which
Hmm.
seems pretty like standard on paper, although it's a lot more like layered beyond the surface. But this film is a sequel to a film that came out 5 years ago, which itself is a sort of legacy sequel to a movie that came out in 1988, which this is sort of capping off the original timeline because a lot of the spin-offs have made like new universes and new timelines, and the chronology of this franchise is just so unbelievably all over the place that I could not tell you what half of it's all about. But this sort of is this like trilogy. This is the second part of a
Part of the
trilogy.
core.
Yeah, this is part of the original timeline that's sort of like a trilogy capping off that timeline and the lineage of like the original main characters. But this is sort of the main character of this is the son of like a military leader and war hero who leads this terrorist organization against
Hmm.
the government because he believes they're corrupt, and it sort of deals with like the political and moral ramifications of such an organization and such a character who has lived through such traumatic things throughout his life and has such like a strong legacy to his name and what he does with that power. But the animation for the first one was absolutely stunning. The first one did not get a theatrical release in the US. It was released straight to Netflix. But the second
Hmm.
one this is the second part of the trilogy, is getting a theatrical release in the US. We don't know when yet. It just premiered in Japan last weekend. So we
Hmm.
don't know when it's coming to the US yet, but the spectacle of it was insane. There was one sequence in the middle where it did something that most installments of this franchise don't really do, where it showed a battle between these two mechs in like a populated city, but from the perspective of people on the ground, seeing this like horrific sight. and sort of like
Hmm.
showing how absolutely terrifying it would be to see a fight like this in such like a crowded city.
Okay, sounds interesting to me.
Yeah.
The next one I know the name of at least. Godzilla minus zero.
So I am not a huge Godzilla person. I
Okay.
the first time I watched anything Godzilla related was Godzilla minus one in 2023 because I had heard overwhelming praise for it and how it depicts the character of Godzilla, but more importantly, since he was used very sparingly in that movie, but it focused more on the human drama. Godzilla was used, it was sort of back to like the original, harkening back to the original 1954 Godzilla, in which
Right.
the giant nuclear breathing dinosaur is a metaphor for like the aftermath of the atomic weapons being dropped in Japan. This
Hmm.
sort of harkened back to that with this character who was a pilot in World War II, who is like this. We use this iconic figure, this iconic monster, as sort of a personification of his fears, of
Hmm.
his trauma, and him defeating him in the end is like him finally overcoming that trauma, finally stop, finally reaching a point where he's not letting it control him anymore.
Hmm.
And the reason this is up here is because it's a sequel to minus one. That's we don't know much
What
about.
does the minus one and the minus zero mean?
No clue.
Huh.
I have no idea what
Uh,
the title actually means, but this is the sequel to minus one. The director won a butt ton of awards for it. The film was impressive, the first one, because it was such a low budget production as well. It had a budget of maybe 10 million, which in the grand
wow.
scheme of big Hollywood movies is not that much.
No.
And it made at the box office almost 10 times that. It made over a
Hmm.
hundred million in the worldwide box office.
I hope
And
he got a bigger budget for this one.
yeah, I don't think it necessarily needs one though, because I feel like the bigger the budget you have, the less creative risks you're able to take because you're
Hmm.
so worried about return on investment. When you don't have much to lose, then there's so much more you can do. When you have so much to lose, then
Gotcha.
you sort of become burdened by getting a return on investment that you stop actually thinking about the ambition of the project itself.
All right, tell me about Dune Part 3. When's that come out?
December 18th. It's going to be like the greatest thing ever. I've waited, I haven't waited that long. Part two came out less than 2 years ago. Honestly, I thought this would be coming out way later, but anything this guy does, the director, Denis Villeneuve, anything he does, I have not seen a single movie of his that has not been like absolutely brilliant.
Hmm.
I have a few reservations just because I have read the first two Dune books, and this film is adapting the second book because the first book was aggressively long and they weren't
Hmm.
able to squeeze it into a single film. So parts one and parts two are both adaptations of the single first book. This
Yeah.
is adapting the second one, but the second one is the shortest book in the series, and it's not even really close. Like the first book has maybe 700 pages, the second book has less than 300.
So this will close out the chap. This closed out the story, though.
This is designed as the final chapter of a trilogy, but the source
Okay.
material is kind of weird and in a weird spot, particularly involving Zendaya's character of Chani, because in
Hmm.
the book, she's kind of just a nothing character. She doesn't really do much. She literally only exists to be Paul Atreides' main love interest.
Uh,
But she is about as far from that as possible in the film. She's still his love interest, but she's not so blindly devoted to him that she's just going to go along with his manipulating of her people in order to enact a genocide against the universe.
mhm.
A genocide
Okay.
which the second book establishes killed 61 billion people, which is kind of insane. So our main character is not a good guy. Your characters are either a bad guy or worse guy.
Okay. Makes for a good story. All right. We got some good ones. So the first one of this group coming out then is Disclosure Day. No
Uh,
Project Mary. Hail Mary's coming out first.
Yeah, that's in March. Gundam
Okay.
Hathaway might be beforehand. Last time there was a Gundam movie released, it made good numbers at the box office and they
Right.
fast-tracked the US release. There was one last year that came out in like mid-January and they had that out in US theaters by late February. So Gundam could
Could
be
come out soon.
yeah, they'll end up announcing the release date in the US like 2 weeks before it comes out. Like they'll most likely announce it pretty last minute.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
it could be out in the US by the end of this month for all we know.
Okay. All right, let's talk about Sinners for a minute. I know we talked about it a little bit last time because it was in your list of top movies for 2025, number two.
Deservedly so.
And
It's
so I went and actually watched it. So I didn't realize there's vampires in it. So it
did I
seems like
not
we always have all these movies have vampires in it these days.
did I not explain that when I talked about it?
You probably did, but it just caught me off guard a little bit when I watched it as well.
Well,
So,
this is actually appropriate timing because when we recorded the last episode, which was 2 weeks ago now, we only released it yesterday, but when we recorded it, the Oscar nominees had not yet been revealed, but they have since been officially revealed, and Sinners has actually set a lifetime like record. It is now the film with the most Oscar nominations for a single film in history, dethroning The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, which had 14. Sinners had 16 nominations at this year's awards. We have no idea how many it's going to win because the actual ceremony is not for another month and a half, but
yeah.
we know
No,
that.
it was a good movie. I mean, so yeah, it's about these two twins that come back to Minnesota, start a juke joint. I didn't know what a juke joint was until watching this movie, but music's amazing.
Yeah, the composer Ludwig Göransson, he's won several Academy Awards for his. He works with because the guy who directed this, Ryan Coogler, he previously directed the Black Panther films for Marvel, and he
Yeah.
works with Ludwig Göransson on all of his films. Ludwig Göransson's also actually been, interestingly enough, Christopher Nolan's go-to composer for the last couple years as well.
Oh, really? Wow.
So
Okay.
he won Best Original Score at the 2019 Oscars for Black Panther with Ryan Coogler and
Mhm.
for Oppenheimer in 2024 with Christopher Nolan.
Oh, that had some interesting music in it too. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I also listened to a podcast with Ryan Coogler, and him and the guy who did all the music met at USC. They went to school together. That's how they met.
You know, that makes sense. They've been friends for a long time and they always work on each other's projects. You know, one thing that I noticed the very first time I watched Sinners opening day in IMAX last year was in the credits. Kugler is actually not Kugler. Ludwig Göransson is actually credited as a producer on the film as well, not only composer.
Yeah. Well, they've been working together. I think on Ryan Coogler's very first film, Ludwig helped.
Yeah, and Kugler has done, or not Kugler, Göransson has done all of Kugler's film scores. Creed in 2015, both Black Panthers, and now this.
Mhm.
Uh, he also did the score for The Mandalorian, and he will be returning to do the score for the film The Mandalorian and Grogu in May, which I am not looking forward to, but
That's for next week.
yeah, we'll get into that next week. There'll be more footage from that.
The way Sinners was shot was certainly cool too. I mean, I don't know, just the lighting and the scenery, and I
The
mean,
sequence where
Mississippi in the what was it 1930s probably or 40s?
yeah, early to mid 30s.
Yeah. So the scenery was awesome. What was your favorite scene?
Um, Outside of like the obvious, like the musical number where you see like the spirits of the past and future,
Mhm.
um, I really liked the musical number with our vampires where they were singing that Irish folk song. I vividly remember where you hear like the build up to that song, and then in the IMAX auditorium, it cut to like when the beat dropped, it cut to the IMAX aspect ratio, and you could like physically feel the beat drop as it dropped
Yeah,
throughout
that's
the
pretty cool.
auditorium, and it was insane.
Yeah. No, that was pretty good. I didn't see it in IMAX, so that must have been awesome.
Oh,
I will say Michael B. Jordan was cool in the scene where he becomes the vampire and he's stuck in that little room. You could
yeah.
just see the change in his face somehow. It was crazy. And the fact that he's played both roles.
They actually invented an entirely new type of camera for to sort of put him in two different places at once.
Oh,
They had
really?
introduced this sort of full body camera that Michael B. Jordan would wear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly how it works, but seeing it behind the scenes is it's just one of the most insane like camera rigs I've ever seen in
Oh,
a
wow.
things footage. Like I don't necessarily know exactly how it works, but he's got like this full rig like mounted around his torso. And
Huh.
he's got like this ring around his neck almost, which I guess is to scan his face
Yeah.
and
Well,
his
I will say he did an amazing job. I mean, and that scene was awesome, but like it was weird in both roles. You know, he obviously looks the same, so there were just subtle differences until he became a vampire, of course. Then
even, yeah, even before then, but from the I mean, you could sort of tell with the way they not just how they dressed, but how they sort of composed themselves.
yeah, yeah, they that
Dressed
you could
like
tell they were different the way they spoke or stood. Yeah, I mean, they did put different hats on them so you keep track of who was who. But
yeah, they
yeah,
did do that. But
yeah,
everything down to just the way they compose. I think a standout performance was actually Jack O'Connell as the main villain, Remick. He
he did a
brought
good
a
job. Yeah.
he did a very good job bringing a sort of like nuance to this like character who we're supposed to see as a monster.
Hmm.
He sort of brought a degree of humanity to him and like outside of beyond his sinister demeanor, there's also like a sadness to him, which they just talked about in some of the behind the scenes stuff. He's supposedly over 1,000 years old, and he has been a
Yeah, well,
vampire for
he's been caught as a vampire for all that time. Yeah,
not as
that's
a vampire. But there's also sort of the parallel with that he's an Irish immigrant, and based on his age, it was probably he was probably infected or bitten around the time that the British sort of subjugated the Irish and forced them into their like Christianity.
hmm
And you sort of see the religious peril with like our technical main character, Sammy. You sort of see the parallel between these two characters and sort of that's sort of where the title Sinners comes from. Is sort of you see these people who have been forced into these religious institutions that aren't linked to their culture,
hmm
like cultural indoctrination almost. Uh,
yeah,
actually, that actually reminds me with Jack O'Connell is he actually is the main villain in 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple as well, which we were going to discuss today, but
yeah. We pushed it till next week.
we're going to get more into his performance there. He was a totally different kind of villain there, but just as
Hmm.
brilliant in the role.
What'd you think of the sex scenes?
Oh my goodness.
Caught you off guard?
No, I kind of expected it. I followed a lot of early reviews for the film, and
Mm.
I also read the MPAA ratings description, so it didn't caught me off guard, and it didn't catch. It's not something that would catch me off guard, not anymore. I watch so many movies that I'm not bothered by it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm
Now,
like,
in the podcast I listened to, Kugler said that his wife is involved in all of his drafts of the when he's writing the screenplays, and he went through about maybe 20 different drafts every time he'd bring them to his wife, and she said, "No, don't make any sense. Try again." And he just kept having to come back and back and back. He said he wouldn't take it to anybody else until his wife approved and understood the screenplay.
wow, they've got a good relationship, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Anything else on Sinners? You gave it a 10 out of 10. So,
Give it a 10 out of 10. The IMAX experience was absolutely insane.
yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move over to Star Wars time.
Star Wars time.
We're going to start with, instead of villains this time, top five heroes. So, you want to start in any particular order here or start from the top?
I'm going to start. These are not in any particular order, but I'm going to get the obvious out of the way. I'm going to start with Luke Skywalker because
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker, I feel like it's kind of self-explanatory. Like he's
Everybody knows that name.
exactly. So I don't really think I need to discuss him too much.
Yeah. He's a hero, I suppose. Maybe a little flawed sometimes, but yeah.
Which is a good thing for the character. I sort of that sort of reminds me of how I've sort of come around on episode 8 particularly a lot lately.
Hmm.
Because episode 8, The Last Jedi, was very controversial, mostly because of its portrayal of Luke Skywalker
Hmm.
and how it sort of shows how, in a moment of pure emotion and instinct, he was going to take the life of his nephew because of a dark vision he saw. And in that moment, he realized how big he screwed up, but it was too late. That's not what Ben didn't see him realizing how big he screwed up. Ben saw him standing over him with a lightsaber. And I sort of feel like he's a lot of people complained about that because, oh, Luke would never try to kill his nephew. Luke would never run away. Luke would never try because Luke saw the good in Vader, so he would never try to kill his nephew if he was afraid of that. And I just keep thinking when I compare those Luke in the originals and Luke in the sequels is that in Return of the Jedi, he, yes, went in expect trying to reach out to Vader, but the microsecond Vader threatened Leia, like he could handle all the threats to himself. If you were threatening
Hmm.
him and trying to turn him, that's one thing. But the nanosecond he threatens someone he cares about, he snaps. And you saw him, like he was playing that fight fairly defensively. Like he was not getting overly ahead of himself until Vader threatened Leia. Then he like ran at him. And I think that sort of lines up because even by the end of the trilogy, he hadn't really subverted that flaw of when the people he loves are in danger, he doesn't think, he just acts on instinct and emotion, which is why I feel like him seeing some vision of a dark future and trying to prevent another Vader is not terribly out of character.
Well, it's a good analogy. I mean, good assessment. Yeah, I mean, yeah, certainly for everybody. I think any parent, I think, knows that too. Like, yeah, threatening one of your kids is a whole lot different than threatening you. So
Yeah,
makes you react in a totally different way. So
yeah.
let's talk about some of the others.
All right, I'm going to move to
Let's start at the top. Luthen Rail. Who is
Luthen.
that?
He is one of the main characters in Andor, played by the wonderfully talented Stellan Skarsgård, who I talked about last time for his performance in
Who was
Sentiment.
on Saturday Night Live this weekend, by the way.
Hmm, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was because he obviously just won a Golden Globe for Sentimental Value. He also
Hmm.
just nominated for an Oscar for that same role.
Yeah.
But his character in Star Wars in Andor is sort of like the gray middleman in the early days of the rebellion. So
Hmm.
what, you've got someone like Mon Mothma, who I will be talking about shortly, who is like the idealist, like we've got to stay true to our morals and true to our values. Luthen is more of the we've got to stoop to their level to be able to beat them. We've got to use their own tools against them. So yes, that means we've got to do bad things. And you sort of see his manipulation tactics and how good he's gotten at manipulating and lying and deceiving
Hmm.
and sort of his ideology of having to sort of accelerate the rate of the empire's oppression to spearhead a rebellion. Like he specifically orchestrates events so that the empire will start oppressing their people more because that'll prompt more people to fight back. He tries to
Well, maybe like Luke. I mean, the thing about a hero, it's, they're all a little flawed. So doesn't it seem odd that a hero is effectively trying to have some people oppressed so that his side could win?
yeah, that sort it puts him as more of an anti-heroic position.
Hmm.
He's more of an anti-hero
Right.
because he's
Maybe
got
there's no such thing as a pure hero.
there's definitely such things as pure heroes, but I don't think Star Wars has too many of them these days,
Yeah.
which is fine by me. I'm okay with these like more
Who's the closest? Is Luke the closest?
I don't actually think so. I think someone like Obi-Wan is probably closer.
Hmm. Yeah, you
Obi
don't, yeah.
Obi-Wan Obi-Wan lost so much in his life, and they sort of show that more on the TV shows, especially.
Hmm.
One moment with Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars where Darth Maul murders his love interest in front of him, and he's lost so much, but his final confrontation with Darth Maul in Star Wars Rebels, when he's much older and much wiser, sort of shows his growth as a person and as a Jedi, where he knows he's lost so much, but he's not letting it turn into anger and into hate, and he's not letting it drive him. Like
Luthen Rail is not, yeah, yeah, never mind.
yeah, Luthen is
Let's talk about the next one. Kanan Jarrus.
yes, he is. That brings us back to Rebels. He's one of the main characters in Rebels, but he was a Jedi who was during the Clone Wars, but he was a Padawan. He was only 14 when the Jedi were wiped out. He survived, but he lived in hiding and constantly tried to suppress who he truly was on the pretense that being who he truly was would get him killed. But he gets roped into the
What
rebel.
made him a hero?
He gets sort of roped into the rebellion in its early days, but when he met this Force-sensitive orphan on the planet Lothal, Ezra Bridger, sort of forced him to confront his own demons from his past and his own fears and insecurities to sort of be a Jedi again and mentor this boy. And he almost became like a father figure to him.
Hmm.
And you sort of see how like his the relationship between him and just the characters around them, because in Rebels there's like a core group of characters that there's like a core of like six characters who function as a family unit, almost like a
Mhm.
found family. And you sort of see that dynamic with the leader of the group, Hera, who is his love interest, and his apprentice, Ezra. You sort of just see how these dynamics with these people force him to go from being this selfish person who wants nothing more than to not die versus someone who is willing to give his life to save the people he loves. He
Okay,
also
that's
goes,
a pretty good story.
he also
Well,
gets
it
forced.
sounds like if you start off the way he did at 14, it's pretty tough transition.
Yeah, yeah. Watching your master get shot, your mentor and
Yeah.
mother figure get shot dead in front of you, and then being told by the government that you are not allowed to exist and will be killed for being yourself. Probably not something you'd really
Yeah.
cover
So
from
the
when at
so the
that age.
fact that he became a hero is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
All right, tell me about the next one, Mon Mothma.
So Mon Mothma actually dates back to Return of the Jedi as the lead. She is the leader of the Rebel Alliance.
Mm,
You only see her briefly in the original trilogy when in the scene where they're planning, where they find out about the second Death Star.
yep.
But she has been fleshed out so much in more recent material, appearing in supporting roles in Rogue One and Rebels and the Clone Wars, and she had some scenes cut from Revenge of the Sith. But she is also a main character in Andor, and
She's
that's
not a Jedi.
no,
Mm.
not a Jedi. She's just a senator who realizes that the Empire is using their power to oppress its people, and that someone has to do something.
So she's a hero because she's always leading the rebellion.
Yes, she was sort of the founder of it. Her alongside Luthen and
Mm.
Bail Organa and I guess Saw Gerrera to an extent, but Saw Gerrera kind of went nuts.
Mm.
And she sort of, I mentioned earlier comparing her to Luthen because they are often seen working together in the early days of the rebellion. You sort of see
Mhm.
the contrast of Mon Mothma, who's trying to do this peacefully before she becomes a full-fledged leader of the rebellion, where she's trying to do this just through like funding secret initiatives and trying to pass bills as which ultimately she learns is completely futile because Palpatine's not paying attention anyway. Palpatine stopped caring about the Senate 10 years ago.
Yeah.
He doesn't even show up to Senate meetings at that point, like ever.
So they're both politicians originally, Luthen and Mon Mothma.
Luthen was not a politician.
Right.
Luthen became a spy master almost,
Mm.
who had a network of spies and assassins, but he himself was an Imperial soldier who deserted because he couldn't take the horrors they were committing anymore.
It does seem odd that a politician could be a hero.
Yeah, we don't have that much of that these days, so
No.
that's how
Tell
you
me,
know it's a work of fiction.
tell me about the next one, Cal Kestis.
Cal is the main character of a trilogy of video games, which are just called Jedi. The first one is Jedi Fallen Order, the second one is Jedi Survivor, and the third one is not out yet, and we have no idea when it's coming out, but it's coming at some point.
Mm.
So Cal is in a similar boat to someone like Kanan, who is another Jedi who was pretty young when the Jedi were wiped out.
Hmm.
But we sort of see him for the first 5 years of the Empire's reign. He was hiding out on a planet called Braca as a scrapper, but after,
He's a Jedi as well.
yes, but after using the Force to save his best friend during an accident while working as a scrapper, he draws the attention of the Empire's Inquisitors, which are Force-sensitive Jedi killers who serve under Darth Vader. And when the Inquisitors come for him, a former Jedi Master and a smuggler have formed this sort of small alliance that are tracking the Inquisitors and saving Jedi survivors. So he ends up roped into this sort of found family as well, finding sort of a purpose in fighting to
Mhm.
protect. Because in this point, we find out about a holocron that contains the names of force sensitive children across the galaxy, and he embarks on a mission to find it and make sure the Empire can't get their hands on it.
Mm.
And after attacking the Inquisitor's fortress to steal it back and barely surviving an encounter with Darth Vader, they sort of there's a time jump between the first two games. In the second game, he is leading rebel initiatives to attack the Empire, but the second game focuses more on him sort of learning that in order to fight the Empire, you can't just hurt them, you have to help their victims. As he sort of finds himself falling in league with a organization called the Hidden Path, which is, to put it simply, a group that is basically the Underground Railroad for Jedi.
Mm.
And he sort of finds
Okay.
he finds a planet that's hidden outside of in a sector of space that's very difficult to access, and he plans to use that as like a safe house for Jedi survivors and other Force sensitives the Empire is hunting. But he also loses his mentor to Darth Vader during the game, and you
Mm.
sort of see him grasping with his emotions and sort of struggling to keep them controlled and not give into that darkness, which is still sort of left hanging at the end of the second game. So I don't
Mm.
know where they're going to go with him and that lingering darkness in the forthcoming third and final installment of the trilogy. I also met the guy who played him at a convention a couple years ago.
Okay.
Name's Cameron Monaghan. Nice guy. He signed my Funko Pop,
Nice.
the character.
All right. Well, that's all five. Yeah, you didn't leave Obi-Wan as on there, but he seems like the most selfless. So
Yeah, he's had some weaker appearances that he's been in. Like
yeah.
he had his own show a couple years ago, and that show was not good. I could go on about how much I disliked that show for quite some time.
Mm.
They did not treat anyone really. That show was insanely like it felt cheap. It didn't feel like they put their effort into it.
Well, we covered all our topics, so we should. So for next time, I think we're going to talk about Nick's top five classic movies to watch. So
So
this Nick is says he's thinking about how he's going to judge this. So good luck,
I
Nick.
have no idea where I'm going to take this, but we'll figure it out.
We're also going to do finally do the 28 years later Bone Temple movie review. So we'll do that next time, and then for Star Wars time, we're going to spend some time talking about what is the future of Star Wars, considering they have some new leadership.
Dave Filoni, who I have mixed thoughts on, and
Yeah. So we'll
somewhat
talk about some of that.
things.
Nick, what's the next movie you're going to see?
Uh, in general or in theaters?
In general, what's the next one on the list?
In general, I don't plan that far ahead.
What's the
Um,
next one in the theaters?
in theaters, I don't think I'm seeing anything this weekend that I'm aware of, but next weekend I am seeing two in one day, actually. I am seeing it's one called Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, which is from Gore Verbinski, who directed the first three Pirates of the Caribbean films.
Okay.
And then I'm seeing one called Crime 101, which is stars Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo. It's from Amazon MGM Studios, which is admittedly not the most reassuring thing in this day and age, since Amazon MGM Studios just gave us Mercy 2 weeks ago, which was one of the most just evil movies I've ever seen. Like it's propaganda for people who think that oppressing civilians is a good thing. And then the week after that, they gave us a documentary about Melania Trump, which is making incredibly low box office numbers, and it's incredibly funny to see.
Well, then after you see those, maybe we'll talk about that and get your quick take reviews. Sound good?
Perhaps.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again for episode three, and we'll see you next time. And yeah, cut.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.